Hey there guys, how you doing today? Just finished up a day of work. First day of the lockdown. So it's only pickup orders. A bit worried that I was going to go into work and it was just going to be total Deadsville, right? Because the fear, from my perspective, is that I don't want to have to start being involved in laying people off. That's the big scary, right? Like Merry Christmas, you're out of a job. Fortunately, my company, Mastermind Toys, who I'm happy to be a part of, they put forward a buy online, pick up in store system. They put that together real fast once the pandemic started, and then people are using it. People are using it. Today was a real test for that system, and we really put together something. I'm really proud of my team today, actually. I'm really proud of the people I work with, because it was a real test of all of our abilities and what we're able to do in the workplace. And we put together something that really worked and was really functioning, and yeah, pretty pleased today. These days, it's at Christmas, man, I just don't have, when I'm at work, I don't have the capacity, the mental power to put any thinking towards politics, towards any of this kind of stuff, right? And I think lots of people are in that boat. And it does seem like people had to sacrifice a lot this year, man. People had to sacrifice a lot this year. Your average citizen had to sacrifice a lot this year, and I really I was talking to somebody just the other day. I'm a pretty introverted person, right? I'm a pretty private person. I'm pretty happy, kind of staying to myself and go out with friends. If I go out with friends once a month, I'm like, oof. Not, that's extreme, but that's an over-exaggeration, but still. But I know people who are on the other side of that, who just need to be with people and need to be connecting with people and having fun and just all of that. They need that in their lives, right? It's what they crave, it's what they demand, it's what they desire. And for them, this lockdown must just be pulling teeth, right? And I really think that getting in the spirit that's flowing around right now is, I will be goddamned if I miss Christmas. I think there are lots of parents who are sick and tired of telling their kids that they've got to miss another thing. I think there's lots of parents who are sick and tired of seeing the disappointment in their children. I can't imagine what it would be like to be a teenager right now. Are you kidding me? What a dumb, stupid, idiotic thing that would be, being a teenager right now. Right? All you want to do is get into a situation where you're surrounded by the right kind of people, let's say. All you can think about is girls or boys or whatever, right? All you can think about is that. You're in this just heightened state. This awkward, transitionary, ridiculous period, and all you're thinking about is having a good time with your friends. And everybody's telling you. I think about this a lot, not to get too negative. That's basically what I do on this channel, but if I'm a teenager, I got all these parents and all these kids, but teachers, all of these authority figures saying put on your masks, do these things, do this thing for us, do this for us. It's for the good of the nation, it's for this and for that. And if I'm a teenager, I'm what the fuck am I going to do? I'm not going to do any of that for you guys. Literally what we've been screaming at you, and what you've been screamed at for decades now, is do something about climate change. How about do something about climate change? Right? I'm going to fucking put on my mask so some boomers can live. That's the teenager attitude, right? As far as the teenagers are concerned, yeah, some boomers die. Okay, off we go. We need them to die. right? I hate to break it. If there's any boomers listening to this, that's how the teenagers think. That's what they're saying, right? They're not walking around going, man, how can we make this place safer so the boomers can live, a nice life of dignity in their old age. They're literally like, how do we kill these guys off as fast as possible so that we can do something about the situation? They're not interested. Like, they're not interested in hearing about this. Like, people are like, man, why are our politics so divisive? I don't understand why politics is so divisive. Meanwhile, there's this like looming monster that's like crushing down on the skulls of your children, and your children are saying, please do something about the monster, and you're standing there being like, I don't understand why our politics is so divisive, while you're feeding the monster but like the blood of your children. Like, our politics are so divisive because there are people who refuse to acknowledge that reality is real and who are standing in the way of any transition to reality, right? That like the other day I was just standing on a street corner with somebody. I'm saying, having a nice time, and I just kind of looked around and I went, it's going to be kind of nice when all these cars are gone. And they were like, I don't understand, what do you mean? Like, it's so strange. I was like, well, and I said it to them exactly as I'm saying it to you now. Well, we're at peak oil right now. Like, we're on the peak right now. We're not going to transition. Like, we don't have the technology. We don't have that ability. We're going to run out of oil. And all these cars and all this kind of stuff that's being powered by the bones of your ancestors, they're gone. They're gone. And there's some countries in Europe that have already accepted that this is going to be the case. Like, in 5 years' time, like, gas is going to be $3 a liter, right? People can't afford that. That's outside the realm of affordability. Unless something drastic happens, which it won't. So, like, what's going to happen is poor people are just going to stop driving, right? There's going to be continued and renewed calls for mass transit projects, which won't happen because they'll be considered unaffordable, even though they're incredibly important and economically a total boon to the society. But we're not really a society. We're just we're essentially 10 billionaires, and we're essentially the pets of 10 billionaires, really. Like, if the billionaire class could do away with us and still have their lattes made for them, they would, right? Like, they don't think about us. They're not interested in us. Like, we're not really a society. We're not really a community. We're just like the serfs of billionaires, We're closer to a Walmart than we are a society. Because society, it implies that we are actually equals with each other, and that we are actually working to a collective goal, that we are trying to help one another. But that's not what we're doing. We're not doing that. And like, it's not going to be too much longer now until the rest of the world starts laughing at us about it. Like, I take a look at a place like China. Like, China is like, if it continues on the trajectory that it's on, like, it's going to be head and shoulders above us in very short order. Because they are a culture that has acknowledged that they are a society, that they need to work together to achieve goals. And yeah, sure, there's mistakes, and yeah, sure, there's botches, and things don't always go as planned, but what matters is the trajectory, right? Like, anyone can pick any one singular event even in one person's life, and if that's what you want to use to define that person, then that's what's going to happen, right? That's who they are, and they'll never get away from it as long as you continue to define them with that one single event. Hey, remember that one time Bobby got drunk at that party and got into a fist fight? Yeah, Bobby, always getting drunk, getting into fist fights. And maybe Bobby doesn't drink anymore, right? Maybe Bobby's the most calm person, most rational person you'll ever meet, right? But you're just being there like, no, don't do that. Bobby will get in a fist fight with you, right? Bobby's not going to spend too much time with you, right? You're not going to spend too much time with Bobby because you're not really acknowledging reality, right? You're just defining an individual by an event that occurred years ago. And I think that happens a lot of the times. Like, I think Western culture, Westerners seem to seem that they can actually judge other cultures, which is odd considering our culture is the most reprehensible. Like, literally, it's a culture based on slavery, genocide, and theft that perpetuates itself through wage slavery. Like, might want to actually think about yourself before you start talking about somebody else there, champ. Might want to actually start addressing the major issues that exist within your own culture before you start pointing the finger at other cultures. Especially as those other cultures are like beginning to surpass you economically, beginning to surpass you in terms of their nation building and in terms of their communication with the rest of the world. Like, people still talk about China as if it's 2010, you know? This is how fast Chinese communism, or socialism if you prefer, has advanced their society, right? That in the space of 10 years, like, in the year 2000, we still thought of China as this, like, paper huts and stuff like that. And they were building major metropolises, right? They were building, like, enormous infrastructure projects on a scale that we may have, I don't think we've ever seen. Like, they're building the largest dam system they have built, the Three Gorges Dam, in China. They've built enormous city infrastructures. They've built urban metropolises. There's this great Vice documentary that you can go see where they've built a series of cities. Some of them are replicas of other existing cities. They have a replica of Paris that they built in China, and they are currently empty because China is preparing for population expansion, right? Their concern is that there's going to be a big boom of population, and so they're building cities in order to prepare for it, right? And there are questions, of course, about, like, okay, well, is that actually going to happen? And we can actually talk about the overpopulation. Well, let's talk about the overpopulation thing. I think that's a capitalist myth, right? Capitalism needs to pretend like we should abandon the poor because the concern is overpopulation, when all of the evidence shows, like, people will only have a whole lot of children if they're convinced that a lot of those children will die young, right? And at the moment parents are not that concerned about their children dying, and then they themselves get a nice education, they themselves are able to get out of this mode of survival that you have to be in order to have, like, 6, 7, 12 children. What happens is that people have 2, right? 3, they don't have so many children because they're not consistently grinding against the stone of survival. Their perception of their reality has changed, and this is common. You can actually observe this in every human civilization, that if people are put into desperation and poverty, well then, yeah, they have a whole bunch of children because that's a survival tactic, right? Most of those children will die, right? But if they don't die, right, well then they don't do that, right? Because you're living in a nicer society. You're living in a society that's not so hell-bent on crushing people. And so this is where the absurdity, because it's counterintuitive, right? This is where the absurdity of the capitalist myth comes from, because they say, well, we should crush the poor to death and not allow them to reproduce, but so that we can prevent overpopulation. But it's the poor who have children who have like massive amounts of children, because it's a survival strategy. Because we're monkeys, dude. Like we're not like deities. We're not like gods or anything. We're monkeys, and if you put us into hard survival mode, we will act as animals act, and we'll just do that. And again, this flows into like acknowledging reality. You know, we don't like to do it. We look at communist nations and say, oh well, you had a famine, and so that's a terrible thing to happen, and so communism itself can't have any validity. Meanwhile, like, we're still perpetuating like international genocides actively. Like, actively. Canada is an arms dealer to Saudi Arabia. Like, Saudi Arabia is able to perpetuate its genocides against Yemen and Oman because we sell them weapons to do so. Like, we're not pure innocent angels. And I mean, I could easily make the same proclamation that, well, why does that not make capitalism a failure, right? Oh, it's because we're doing it. That's really what it comes down to. If they do it, then it means that there's a large-scale systemic problem with the structure and idea of communism. If we do it, it means that capitalism is a resounding success. Right? Like, I don't know why our politics are so divisive. I don't understand why are our politics so divisive while people are living in fairy tale lands. Like, for fuck's sake. And then the people living in fairy tale lands, like the QAnon people, like the QAnon people, these poor people. And I have a lot of sympathy for these people. Like, we're making fun of them as a culture. We mock them. I have a lot of sympathy for these people, because the people who are in QAnon and the people who are QAnon fans and all this kind of stuff, they have been abandoned in a way that most people cannot comprehend. You have to be thoroughly abandoned to fall prey to such overt grifting and such obvious con behavior, right? Like, if you are in a position where you have nothing else in your life, and given that America is collapsing in on itself and is abandoning people en masse purposefully on a level that's they will not recover from for decades, then grifters can come through and the QAnon movement makes perfect sense, right? They're the ones that, like, QAnon is at least telling people, hey, have you noticed that the billionaire class are a bunch of pedophiles? Have you noticed that there's a cabal of pedophiles who are creating a sex trade industry that no one seems to be talking about? Like, Jeffrey Epstein blew that up, right? Jeffrey Epstein blew that up, and when his little black book came out and everybody saw, like, Donald Trump was in that book, Bill Clinton had been on those flights, right? Like, the most powerful people in their country, but even people like Bill Gates, right? So the most powerful billionaires, the most powerful politicians were heavily involved, or at least loosely affiliated, with a known pedophile sex trafficker. And no one seems to give a fuck about that at all. Except QAnon. QAnon gives a shit about that. QAnon talks about that. And they're wild and they're crazy and their ideas are dumb and all this kind of stuff, but they're talking about it. Right? I don't hear CNN talking about that. I don't hear anybody talking about that. Right? And if you're a person who you live in complete and abject poverty, you have no prospects, all the elite, rich people like your Ben Shapiro's, like your political hacks, these sort of illiterate people say as well, just sell your house. And you're like, sell your house to who? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? these guys are walking around being like, you need to pull yourself up and do better in your life. And you look around your town that has been completely decimated by the Walmart that rolled in, and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about even, right? It's like telling, it would be like the American military goes into Iraq and destroys Iraq and tears it into pieces, and your father gets murdered, and then some general comes up to you and says, you just need to do better, pull yourself up. That's how you succeed in life. Like, well, maybe if you stopped grinding people into poverty and destroying them, right? Maybe that would help. But they're not interested in helping. Like, that's not that's not part of the deal. That's not part of the deal. Helping isn't part of the deal, right? That if they were interested in helping, things would be a lot better, right? If somebody actually, if these hack propagandists actually were interested in helping, then life would be a lot better, frankly. But they're not. They're not interested in helping. They're interested in money for themselves and propagating their weird little cult ideologies, right? Yeah, strange times we live in, guys. Strange times. Like, there's a real we as a people need to start having a more serious, sincere conversation about why we're so interested in abandoning our citizens, because that we are doing that. Like, that is an undeniable truth that we are looking at, and we need to really start asking ourselves, like, why are we abandoning people? What is this manic demand and this manic desire amongst huge sections of the population to condemn millions of people into total poverty and to just abandon them, right? Why do we think that is a good idea? Why do we think that is something that we should be doing? And the only thing that I've found recently, and the only thing that I think about on that point is, like, fascism is very popular. Fascism is a very popular political position. People like the idea of purges. People like the idea of committing atrocities. They just don't want to outright come out and say it, right? Like, they don't want to actually stand up and say, like, yeah, like, I feel like if you make less than $50,000, you're not a human being and you should be eliminated from our society. But that's fundamentally what their argument is. If you're voting conservative, that's 100% what you're saying, that we should abandon large-scale sections of the populace, and if that leads to their suffering, oh well. They should have planned better when I robbed them. Yeah, I think we're in for a reckoning. It's going to be really brutal. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be fun at all. Like, I look at the United States right now and I think to myself, like, holy cow, like, there's a country that's going to go through just like a mass scale reckoning. And the only way it's going to happen, like, here in Canada, we literally could all just vote NDP and that would be the end of it, right? Like, if we all just abandoned the Liberals and the Conservatives, moved over to any other political party, that would fundamentally shift the nature of politics here in Canada. But in the United States, they have no such opportunity. They have no such option. So the only way they're actually going to get anything done is by surrounding the White House and the Congress. That's the only way they're going to get it done, like they did in the 60s. Like, it's not a radical idea what I'm talking about, right? It's what they were doing. It's what your parents were doing. Like, I don't understand where this idea that protesting, like, we all watched these movies where protesting was cool and everyone that was doing it was passionate and lovely and beautiful. I watched these movies over and over again when I was a kid. And now I'm supposed to believe that the people going out to protest now are somehow degenerates? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what the absolute fuck are you talking about? It's staggering to me that people are willing to buy into the stupidity and illiteracy of all this. Like, and it's just, we gotta stop. If if anything is owned by a billionaire, you need to stop paying attention to it. Period. Like, if billionaires want you to watch CNN or watch Fox, if billionaires owned any of this, you just need to stop. And if you know somebody who is watching this stuff, you just need to tell them to stop, because it's not useful to them. It's quite harmful to them, because they're actively allowing themselves to get hypnotized by a class of people who are actively seeking to abandon them. Like, don't do it. Just turn it off. Watch something different. Right? Let yourself get hypnotized by some small level local shit. At least then you might actually like learn something about yourself, maybe, instead of just being scared and pissing your pants the whole time. And we really do got to start asking ourselves, like, why are we abandoning each other? What is it serving? Why are we doing it? Like, and we are. I think you have to be completely out to lunch and delusional to think that we're creating a cohesive society, when what we're doing is obviously abandoning one another. Anyway, I think that's the end of me, guys. If you made it to this point and you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Hit the likes, hit the dings, hit the things, hit all that kind of stuff. Do all the things. I hope you're all doing well out there, guys. I hope you're all doing well out there. Go say hi to your neighbors. Try to have fun. I love you all.